In September 2024, the Perseverance rover was exploring an ancient riverbed when it spotted something unusual. A rock with patterns that shouldn't exist. Patterns that, on Earth, mean only one thing: life. But it gets complicated. Because NASA has been burned before, twice, and they're not making that mistake again, the rock has a name: Cheyava Falls. Named after a waterfall in the Grand Canyon, and on its surface, spots, leopard spots. Dark reddish-brown markings scattered across pale stone. This is not just a rock with spots. Rocks have patterns. The big deal is what those spots are made of, and what they mean. Each spot contains something extraordinary. A mineral cocktail that scientists recognize. Iron oxide on the outside, iron phosphate on the inside. Specifically, vivianite and greigite. And here's the thing about those minerals. On Earth, when we find them together like this, they're almost always created by one thing: microbial life. The spots are small, millimeters across, but they tell a massive story about chemistry, about energy, something that might have been alive, the chemistry of life, or something else. Let's talk about what these spots actually are, because the science here is fascinating. The outer ring is hematite, rust, essentially. Iron that's been oxidized. The inner core is different. Reduced iron compounds, the opposite chemical state. This is important, because moving iron from one state to another takes energy. And on Earth, microbes do this all the time. They're called chemolithotrophs. Organisms that eat rocks, essentially. They strip electrons from iron, from sulfur, from manganese. They use chemical gradients the way we use food. And when they do, they leave marks, spots, halos, chemical signatures. Exactly like what we're seeing on Cheyava Falls. But here's what makes this truly compelling. The rock isn't just about the spots. It contains organic compounds, carbon-based molecules, the building blocks of life as we know it, along with phosphorus and oxygen signatures that indicate water, liquid water, once flowing through this very rock. Mars today is a frozen desert, but Jezero crater, where Perseverance is exploring. 3.5 billion years ago, it was a lake, fed by rivers, possibly for millions of years. And this rock formed at the bottom of that lake, or near its shore, in conditions that would have been perfect for microbial life. The problem with being right before, NASA wants to be sure this time, and they have good reasons. Back in 1976, the Viking lander missions, 2 spacecraft on Mars running experiments. One of them was called the labeled release experiment. The idea was simple: add nutrients to Martian soil. If microbes are present, they'll eat the nutrients and release gas, which you can detect, and that's exactly what happened. The soil released gas. The experiment gave a positive result for life. Scientists were ecstatic. We found life on Mars. But then, doubt crept in. Other experiments on Viking gave negative results. No organic molecules detected. How could there be life without organic molecules? The scientific community grew skeptical. The consensus shifted. The gas release was probably a chemical reaction, not biology, just weird Martian chemistry. NASA was embarrassed. They'd announced evidence of life and had to walk it back. Then, 20 years later, it happened again. The meteorite that divided science. August 1996, President Bill Clinton stood in the White House Rose Garden, making an announcement that captivated the world. A meteorite, designated ALH 84001, found in Antarctica in 1984, confirmed to be from Mars, 4 billion years old. And inside it, NASA scientists found structures, tiny, microscopic structures, that looked like fossilized bacteria along with organic molecules. Magnetite crystals, chemical signatures, everything you'd expect from ancient microbial life. The announcement was huge. Life on Mars. Not just possible, proven, but the scientific community wasn't convinced. The structures were too small, some said. Too small to be cells. The organic molecules could be contamination. The magnetite could form inorganically. Debates raged for years. Teams published papers, counter papers, arguments and rebuttals. And slowly, the excitement faded. Most scientists concluded, probably not life, probably just geology. Interesting geology, but not biology. NASA had been burned again. So now, with Cheyava Falls, they're being careful, methodical, almost painfully cautious, because they know what happens when you cry wolf. Even if, this time, the wolf might actually be there. The case for life. Let's look at what makes Cheyava Falls different. What makes this more compelling than Viking? More convincing than ALH 84001? First, the context. This isn't just a rock with strange features. It's a rock from a known lake environment where water definitely flowed for potentially millions of years. In Mars's early history, when the planet was warmer, wetter, more Earth-like. Second, the chemical signatures. The leopard spots contain organic compounds, complex carbon-based molecules, the kind that could be biological precursors or biological products. Third, the minerals, vivianite and greigite together. On Earth, this specific combination is strongly associated with microbial iron reduction. It's not impossible for them to form abiotically, but it's unusual. Fourth, and this is crucial, the spatial organization. The spots aren't random. They're localized, concentrated, as if something was creating chemical gradients, processing materials, the way microbes do. Fifth, the phosphorus. Life needs phosphorus. It's in our DNA, our cell membranes, our energy molecules, and Cheyava Falls is rich in it. And sixth, perhaps most intriguingly, the olivine problem near Cheyava Falls. Scientists found olivine crystals. Olivine is a mineral that doesn't survive well in acidic conditions. It dissolves, breaks down, but here it is, preserved right next to the rock with the spots. This matters because one of the alternative explanations for the leopard spots was acidic water. Maybe volcanic gases dissolved in water, creating acid, which could theoretically create these patterns through purely chemical processes. But if the environment was that acidic, the olivine wouldn't be there. It would have dissolved away. So the acid explanation doesn't work, at least not easily. What about volcanic activity? Could heat and volcanic processes create these patterns? Maybe, but the organic compounds would likely be destroyed, burned away. And they're not. They're present, abundant. What about meteor impacts? High energy collisions that create heat and pressure? Could work, but the patterns are too organized, too systematic. Impact chemistry tends to be chaotic. These spots are orderly through a process of elimination. Each alternative explanation runs into problems, not insurmountable problems, not definitive disproofs, but difficulties. And that's what makes this so compelling. Not one smoking gun, but multiple lines of evidence, all pointing in the same direction. What scientists are actually saying. Katie Stack Morgan is the deputy project scientist for Perseverance. Here's what she said about Cheyava Falls. This is the most puzzling, complex, and potentially important rock yet investigated by Perseverance. Not definitive, not conclusive, but important. Puzzling. David Flannery, an astrobiologist from Queensland University of Technology, put it this way. The observations are consistent with ancient microbial life, but they don't prove it. Ken Farley, project scientist for Perseverance. We have designed the route for Perseverance to ensure that we have the best chance to provide samples that could answer these profound questions. Notice the language. Could answer. Might indicate. Potentially important. This is how science actually works. Not with dramatic pronouncements, but with careful qualification, with acknowledgement of uncertainty, with intellectual humility, because the truth is, we can't know for sure. Not yet. Not from Mars, the mission that will decide everything. There's only one way to know. Bring the rock home. That's the plan. The Mars Sample Return Mission. One of the most ambitious space missions ever conceived. And one of the most expensive, potentially $11 billion. Here's how it works. Perseverance has been collecting samples, drilling cores from rocks, sealing them in tubes. Cheyava Falls is one of those samples, currently stored inside the rover. The plan is to send another mission to Mars. A lander with a small rocket, the Mars Ascent Vehicle. Perseverance will deliver the samples to this lander. The rocket will launch them into Mars orbit. First launch from another planet in history. Then an orbiter will capture the samples and bring them back to Earth, landing sometime in the 2030s. If everything goes according to plan, then the real work begins. The tests that could prove life. When the samples arrive on Earth, scientists will subject them to tests impossible to do on Mars. Tests that require equipment the size of buildings, precision that takes years to achieve. One of the key tests, chirality. Here's what that means. Amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, come in two forms, left-handed and right-handed. Mirror images of each other, chemically identical, but structurally reversed. In non-biological chemistry, you get equal amounts of both. 50-50, random. But life on Earth, at least, uses only left-handed amino acids exclusively. No one knows exactly why, but it's universal among terrestrial life. So if Cheyava Falls contains amino acids, and they're all left-handed, that's extremely hard to explain without biology. Another test. Carbon isotopes. Carbon comes in different isotopes. Carbon 1,2 and carbon 1,3 are stable. Life prefers carbon 1,2. It's slightly lighter, slightly easier to use in biochemical reactions. So biological carbon has a distinct isotopic signature, a ratio that differs from non-biological carbon. If the organic compounds in Cheyava Falls show this biological preference, that's another strong indicator. And there are other tests, microscopy at resolutions impossible on Mars, mass spectrometry that can identify individual molecules, chemical analyses that can detect biosignatures, patterns in mineral distribution, textures in the rock, layer upon layer of investigation. NASA has developed something called the Confidence of Life Detection Scale, CoLD for short. It's a framework for evaluating evidence. From 1 to 7, 1 means you've detected something interesting. 7 means you've definitively proven life. Right now, with the data from Perseverance, Cheyava Falls sits somewhere around a 3 or 4. Intriguing, compelling, but not conclusive. The goal of the sample return mission is to move that number higher, to either confirm or rule out the biological hypothesis, what it means if they're wrong. Let's say the samples come back, scientists run every test imaginable, and the verdict is not life, just chemistry, unusual chemistry. But abiotic, would that be a failure? Not at all, because Cheyava Falls would still tell us something profound about early Mars, about prebiotic chemistry, about the conditions that might lead to life. Mars, 3.5 billion years ago, was remarkably similar to Earth at the same time. Both had liquid water. Both had organic chemistry. Both had energy sources. If Mars had these leopard spots, these complex chemical patterns, but no life, that tells us something about how rare life might be, about how specific the conditions need to be. And it would give us a window into Earth's own past, because early Earth didn't leave many records. Plate tectonics recycled the surface, erased the evidence. But Mars is geologically dead. Its surface is ancient, preserved, a museum of the early solar system. So even a negative result would be scientifically valuable, would teach us about our own origins, what it means if they're right. But what if they're not wrong? What if the tests come back and the evidence points to life? That changes everything. First, it would mean life arose on Mars, independently, in a different environment, from different starting conditions. That would suggest life isn't rare, isn't a cosmic fluke, isn't a one-time accident. If life arose twice, in one solar system, in similar but distinct environments, then life might be common everywhere. This relates to something called the Drake equation, a formula for estimating the number of communicative civilizations in our galaxy. One of the terms in that equation is the fraction of planets where life actually appears. If that number is high, if life is easy, then the galaxy could be teeming with it. But there's a catch, a principle called the 0-1 infinity rule. In complex systems, the only stable numbers are 0, 1, or infinity. If life has arisen twice in our solar system, then it probably hasn't arisen just twice. It's probably arisen countless times, everywhere conditions allow. And that raises a question, a famous question, the Fermi paradox. If life is common, if it arises easily, if the galaxy should be full of civilizations, then where is everyone? Maybe the answer is that life is common, but complex life is rare. Maybe microbial life is everywhere, but the jump to multicellular organisms, to intelligence, to technology, that's the hard part. Or maybe we're early. Maybe we're among the first. In a universe that's still young, still waking up, or maybe they're out there, and we just haven't found them yet. The bigger picture, this rock from Mars, this small spotted stone, sits at the intersection of so many questions. Questions about our origins, questions about our place in the universe, and about whether we're alone. And the remarkable thing, the truly extraordinary thing, is that we can answer these questions. Not through philosophy, not through speculation, but through observation, through measurement, through science. We send a robot to another planet. We drove it to an ancient lake bed. We examined rocks that formed when Earth was young. We found patterns that might indicate life. And now we're planning to bring those rocks home, to test them, to know. That's unprecedented in human history. For thousands of years, the question of life beyond Earth was purely philosophical, theological, speculative. Now it's empirical, testable, within reach, but we have to wait years, perhaps a decade or more. The Mars sample return mission is complex, expensive, politically vulnerable. NASA's budget is always under scrutiny. The mission has faced delays, cost overruns, questions about feasibility. There's no guarantee it will happen, at least not on the current timeline, or with the current design. But even if it takes longer, even if the plan changes, the samples will come home eventually. Because this question is too important, too fundamental, too close to answering. We know where the rock is. We know what tests to run, what we're looking for. We just need to be patient, to wait, to let the mission unfold. And in the meantime, Perseverance keeps exploring, keeps drilling samples, keeps collecting evidence. Each rock tells a story about Mars, about water, about chemistry, about possibility, and somewhere in those samples, in those carefully sealed tubes, might be the answer to one of humanity's oldest questions. Are we alone? Imagine that we're even having this conversation. 100 years ago, Mars was a mystery, a red dot in the sky. Some thought it had canals, cities, civilizations. All wrong, of course. 50 years ago, we sent our first successful missions. Viking, simple landers. Basic experiments. We found a world more complex than we imagined, and more subtle. Today, we have a car-sized rover with laboratories, cameras, and a drill, exploring an ancient lake bed, examining rocks in detail impossible from Earth. And soon, we'll bring those rocks home, to laboratories even more sophisticated, to test them with precision unimaginable decades ago. The arc of this exploration, from speculation to investigation, from wonder to knowledge, is one of humanity's greatest achievements. Regardless of what Cheyava Falls ultimately reveals, regardless of whether those spots are biological or geological, we've already accomplished something remarkable. We've turned an eternal question into a solvable problem. That's the power of science. That's the promise of exploration. That's why we keep pushing, keep asking, keep reaching beyond our world, because the answers are out there, waiting in ancient rocks, on distant worlds, in patterns we're only beginning to understand. And one day, maybe in the 2030s, or maybe later, we'll know. We'll know if life arose twice. If those spots on Cheyava Falls represent something that lived, something that processed energy, something that existed billions of years ago on another world. And if the answer is yes, everything changes. If the answer is no, we still learn something profound. Either way, we learn, we understand our universe a little better, and that is worth the wait. The Cheyava Falls sample is stored on Perseverance right now, waiting, along with dozens of other samples. Each a piece of Mars's history, a potential answer to profound questions. The Mars sample return mission is scheduled for the 2030s, but you can follow the journey now. NASA shares updates regularly. Images from Perseverance, new discoveries, new questions. The search for life beyond Earth is the greatest scientific endeavor of our time, and it's happening now. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.